Well, hi, welcome to TV3 Extra. Today, I am so excited to have back author Sarah Sundin. Sarah, hello, thank you for joining us again.
Hi, Raina. I'm so glad to be back.
Well, since we talked to you last, you've had two new books come out, When Twilight Breaks and Until Leaves Fall in Paris. And they've take place at a time period that I'm not really familiar with, which is pre-World War II. So if we could kind of talk a little bit about the settings of these books, and let's start with When Twilight Breaks. Can you tell us what time period we are in and kind of what Hitler was up to?
Well, When Twilight Breaks takes place in Munich, Germany in 1938. So that's a year before the war began, but it was a really momentous year leading up to the war. It kind of made the war inevitable at that point, really. And so it was really fascinating time period because, Hitler was gaining strength and he was testing the waters. So he took over Austria, and then he threatened to invade Czechoslovakia and basically bullied England and France into giving part of Czechoslovakia to Hitler. And Czechoslovakia had no choice in the matter. It was a horrible betrayal, really. It was unconscionable. England and France actually had a treaty to protect Czechoslovakia, and then they basically told Czechoslovakia, hey, if Hitler invades, you're on your own, so you're better off just letting him have it. And it was a really low point for the Allies, or who would be the Allies. Anyway, but that taught Hitler, both of those, when he took over Austria and when he took over the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, both of those taught him that if I push, I'll get what I want. And of course, we all know bullies. If you give them, I think of Evelyn saying the story that if you give a bully your lunch on Monday, he'll want it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you get in this rut with him. And sure enough, when he took over the rest of Czechoslovakia and later in early 1939, the Allies once again said, "You naughty Hitler, you shouldn't have done that," and didn't do anything. And so he invaded Poland thinking they were going to do the same thing, but that time they actually said, no, that you've stepped too far. But each time Hitler was testing that line, and how much territory could he gain without firing a shot? And it was a shockingly large amount of territory. But at the same time, there's so much going on in Germany as far as the oppression rising, the persecution of the Jews rising. We're still years away from the concentration camps, from the Holocaust, but already the restrictions are rising. There's pressure on the Jews, especially at that point. They really weren't talking about exterminating the Jews at that point. At that point, their goal was to get all the Jews out of Germany. So they were trying to make it as miserable for them as possible so that they would leave, and then starting to try to force them out. So, really awful time period in Germany all around. So I thought that was a very interesting setting for a novel. And obviously, as you can tell, I found the history quite fascinating. And it was great fun to put my characters right in the middle of it, and they're watching it unfold and reacting to it and getting caught up in it.
Yeah, I think about it as I'm reading it and not knowing a lot of this, and I thought, God, how would I have reacted? You see that there is order taking place, and, that may look good, but yet, some of the other things going on it's tough. I'm glad I wasn't in that position.
Yeah. And that's what was interesting. I had my hero and my heroine they start off the story looking at it from different ends, which was actually very common. That they're both Americans, so they're coming in as observers in a way. They don't feel as directly involved, but they're coming in. Obviously, they have different backstories, but they react differently to what they're seeing. And Evelyn Brand is an American correspondent. She comes in and she just sees how horrible Nazi Germany is and how much oppression there is and how the people are giving up their freedoms. And that was all true. Peter Lang is coming at it from a different point of view. He's coming in and he's saying, hey, look, everybody in Germany has jobs. They had almost no unemployment. And this is at the height of the Great Depression, where unemployment in America was about 25 to 30%. So, I mean, we're talking 25 to 30% of American, and we're really talking about American men out of work, because that time very few women were working. So that meant 25 to 30% of American homes without a breadwinner. So, and there was a lot of strife in America. There were riots, there were strikes, there was just great disorder in America, actually throughout the whole world. And you went to Germany, there was peace on the streets, there was prosperity, there was order. And that was extremely appealing. I read quite a bit about Americans and British who went to Germany during the late 30s, and there were two polar opposite reactions. They either thought what Hitler was doing was awful and he was a monster and he needed to be stopped, or Hitler's obviously doing something right because look at how happy and peaceful and prosperous this nation is. And they were building, they were building the Autobahns, they were building buildings, they were just building, and at a time where the rest of the world was destroying. So that was very appealing to a lot of people. And what struck me so much was, having read about this time period before, and the sense that the German people felt they had to choose between fascism and communism. And I kept thinking, why would they feel they have to choose? They should pick something in the middle. And then we come to America, and in this past 5 to 10 years, as a nation, we've almost been saying you have to choose either toward fascism or toward communism, and that there is no middle road. And then if you're leaning that way, you're evil, and if you're leaning that way, you're evil. And this division and rancor, and seeing it happen here in America was heartbreaking, because I was like, that is exactly what was happening in Germany. And that breaks my heart, because obviously we saw how that ended, and it didn't end well. So but for tourists coming in, both they either saw one or the other. And the interesting thing is that those people who went in expecting to see oppression had their feelings confirmed and saw more and more oppression. And those people who came in expecting to see peace and prosperity saw it even more and more. And they became more and more hardened in their feelings. So the fact that I had Peter, who starts to see, he comes in seeing the order and the peace and the prosperity, and then he starts to see the ugliness underneath it. So for him to actually do that and come more to the middle was unusual. But I wanted to, and also for Evelyn to come to the realization that freedom without order is not true freedom. So for both of them to come to an appreciation for the other person's values, and that was a rare thing. And sadly, it's rare now too.
Yeah. As I was listening to the book, I thought, man, did Sarah have a crystal ball? Because I felt like it was so happening right now, everything that we are experiencing.
Yeah. And I kept bringing my research books to my husband. I'd read him a passage. It's like, does that describe today, or does it describe Germany in 1938? And it was like, sometimes it was like word for word, like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm hearing here in America today. And that was rather, I would just get, it was rather terrifying.
It is actually terrifying. And it was crazy. Okay, so on to happier things. Yeah.
They do fall in love.
Okay, so the character of Evelyn, now, like you said, she's a correspondent. Now, did you base her off of anybody in real life?
I didn't base her on any one human being, but I read a lot about the journalists and reporters at that time. I read William Shirer's amazing Berlin Diary, where he's half of what he's talking about is this culture of the reporters hanging out with each other, and all these really intelligent, well-informed, strong-willed people getting together and bouncing ideas off of each other and teasing each other, and just this culture. And I could just imagine, any woman strong enough to succeed in a culture like that is going to have a very strong personality and be very bright and sharp with her tongue and quick with her tongue. And Evelyn just was there. She was such a fun character to write. She could say all the things I can't say, because I'm like one of these people, oh no, what will they think? They won't like me. And Evelyn doesn't care. She just says it. So it was great fun, especially when she and Peter were together. Just the banter between those two was just, I couldn't write it down fast enough because they were just bantering in my head. So, but there were these female reporters who were in Germany at the time. And they did end up getting themselves in trouble a lot, because if you have somebody who's strong-willed and opinionated and quick to speak and slow to think, that type of person is going to get themselves in trouble in Nazi Germany, especially if they're, speaking against the Nazis. And sure enough, most of these women did get them. Most of the men too got themselves in trouble. They were constantly getting themselves kicked out of Germany. The Germans didn't officially censor American broadcasts, but if you didn't say what they wanted you to say, they could kick you out of the country. And obviously, then your employer is annoyed with you because they need to have somebody on the ground in Germany. So if their reporters keep getting kicked out, then they're not there getting the news. The other company is. So there was this pressure for them to report the news as accurately as possible without ruffling the Nazi feathers, which obviously was difficult for people like that.
And again, I think you had a crystal ball, because I see a lot of parallels again with that.
Oh yeah,
media today.
Exactly. Yeah, on both sides of the political spectrum. I mean, it's no matter what we have this. Yeah, it's a delicate balance we all walk, but I had great reading about these women, and they were feisty creatures. Dorothy Thompson, she got herself kicked out as early as 1934, only a year after he came to power. And then Sigrid Schultz, and she was quite a woman. She was bureau chief for the Chicago Tribune for 15 years, and she managed to walk that line pretty well. But there are a few times the Gestapo was actually trying to frame her. And I mentioned this story in When Twilight Breaks. And they mailed plans for a weapon to her house and then sent the Gestapo to her house. And the idea was they would come and they would find this oh, look, you have our secret weapons, you're a spy. And then, of course, as a spy, she could be executed. So it wasn't just getting kicked out of the country, she could be executed. And so fortunately, she opened that package, saw what it was, and was smart enough to know exactly what was going to happen. She marched that stuff right over to she burned it. She burned it and then went straight to, I think her mother was there, and her mother called her, and then her mother said, and Sigrid said, burn it right now. And she did. And then she marched herself over to the U.S. Embassy. As she's walking to the U.S. Embassy, the Gestapo's coming up to her apartment, and she just blatantly says, I know what you're doing. The plans are burned, and I'm going to the U.S. Embassy right now, and I'm telling them what you did. They didn't bother her again. But that just shows you how strong and smart she was, because she came that close to getting herself in a whole lot of trouble without having done anything wrong. But yeah, very, very dangerous times to be anywhere near Nazi Germany.
Yes, and how evil it was.
Yeah, I know. It really was.